Brad, I want to get your thoughts firstly on the JNJ report. JJ and I were just discussing shares, a little changed, but it looks like they're in a pretty solid place.
Yeah, I think you covered it very well on the last segment. It was really two stories. The medical devices segment, was very challenged. It was down almost 40%, but pharmaceuticals was up. And so it's just a balancing act. Do you believe that medical devices segment is going to rebound sooner rather than later, as hopefully our economy gets back on track and people start doing more elective surgical procedures? But, Johnson & Johnson is the largest healthcare company in the entire world, and it's always been a steady growth type of company. And it was really built for times like this. You want to own a company like J&J when things are turbulent. That's the type of company that will get you through this. And so I'm a big fan. And if you have a long-term outlook on a company like that, it's hard to go wrong on our country's biggest healthcare company.
Okay, I like that. Built for times like this. Brad, J&J is a fun stock. It's a great company. But let's get into the real fun stuff here, all right? Let's go to Moderna. What'd you think? Just give me the straight dope, Brad, of the update that we got this week. Markets seem to think it was a big deal. What say you?
Yeah, so I thought overall it was positives. With everything, there are pros and cons. In this case, the thing that's really encouraging is that all the volunteers in their study produced what we call neutralizing antibodies at levels that were equal or higher to what people who recover from COVID are having. So that's a really good sign. You'll hear a fancy scientific term, convalescent sera. All that means is that the vaccine seems to be providing protection that's equal or greater than people who are naturally recovering from this. So that's the good thing. There's a couple cons. I think that overall people are not appreciating risk like they should when they see these headlines. So here's a couple things to keep in mind with Moderna and other vaccines. So in Moderna's case, first of all, actually for all of these vaccines, we don't know what level of antibodies will be required for full protection. So even though the level looks pretty good, we don't know with certainty that it's actually going to, work at the end of the day. We'll only know that when they run a big phase 3 trial, comparing it to a placebo and seeing how many people get sick. So we have to watch for that. Another thing we don't know is how durable the vaccine is. What they presented a couple days ago, they just showed 57 days after the initial vaccination. And of course, we want to know if people are going to have protections for months, if not years from this. We just don't know that yet. Another thing to keep in mind with the messenger RNA vaccines like Moderna, it's requiring 2 vaccinations. You get one on day 1, and then you have to come back 28 days later. When you're trying to vaccinate literally the entire country or the whole world, that could be a very logistically challenging thing. And so you have to think about that. And also these messenger RNA vaccines have to be frozen to very cold temperatures to ship and distribute them. So there's a couple challenges that this will have to overcome, and you've got to weigh those as seriously as the pros. Seems like the headlines lately only talk about the good things, but it's important to also understand the risks of something like this as well.
Brad, I was talking with someone from college about this, a smart friend that said, and they work in the medical industry, said the antibody tests aren't the most accurate things around. So ask any physician. They're not a sure report. What do you say to that? Are there risks here that the data that we're getting is not going to be, to your point here, it's kind of about this, right? Which is that, look, there's questions of durability, how long it stays in there. But what about the actual production of the antibodies themselves? Because this is such an important part of this. If it indeed is true, then that seems like it's a matter of time before we can figure something out that does work. So can we rely on the antibody data that we have?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a very smart comment. That was even mentioned in the paper that was published. Right now, we don't know. And it's important to know that this was just a phase 1 study. And the antibodies whether the measurement is perfect or not, at the end of the day, it doesn't tell us if this works. The only way we're going to know that for sure is running a phase 3 study, which they're starting in a couple of weeks. It's going to be 30,000 people. Half of them will get the vaccine, half of them will get a placebo. And you see how many in each group end up coming down with COVID-related disease. So if the vaccine group gets less, then you know it works. Right now, the antibody data, whether it's perfect or not, even if it was 100% perfect, is just a hint. It doesn't tell us at the end of the day. So we're not going to know that until we run this phase 3 study either way.
Okay. AstraZeneca and a big story in Bloomberg yesterday also coincided with this about the Oxford team that is making progress. And one of the quotes I thought from there, this amazing story about the woman leading that effort, she basically said in the story they quoted that this was a matter of time. That was the, I'm paraphrasing, but it was pretty amazing reading that. She said, look, it's going to happen. Like, I have faith that this thing is going to happen. And I have experience in the industry to know that it's going to happen. What do you think? Is it as much of a matter of time, or is there still a non-zero possibility that it's just impossible to create?
Yeah, that was a terrific story. I read that too. I would be a little more cautious. Biology has a way of surprising us. I think what gave her confidence is they've used their particular platform on previous coronaviruses like SARS and MERS. And so she views this as kind of a plug and play type thing, but and biology is very difficult, and until you do something, you don't know. So I would be a little more careful, but circle Monday on your calendar. So Reuters confirmed with the Lancet that the AstraZeneca Oxford data is going to be published on Monday. And we're going to be comparing that very closely with Moderna, and also Pfizer and BioNTech also had some messenger RNA data earlier this month. And so we're going to be comparing the two. And it's important to know that Astra and Oxford are using more of a traditional vaccine. Theirs is what's called a viral vector vaccine. And one thing we're going to be watching for is that one may only need one dose. So as I mentioned with Moderna, you have to come back 28 days later. Oxford's going to try to avoid that. So we'll see what their antibody levels look like from one vaccination, and we'll have to see whether they need a booster dose as well. And the other thing is, with that viral vector vaccine, it only needs to be chilled, not frozen. So the logistics of manufacturing it and sending it out to the entire world might be a little easier. So we'll be comparing the efficacy and safety. If they're equal, that one might have a leg up because it's more of a traditional vaccine. So we'll have to watch that on Monday. That's going to be a huge, huge data release. The whole stock market's going to be watching that one closely.